Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to our second Friday Forum. Before we get started, I'd like to share a programming note. Next Friday, April 24th, we will have an agent panel. We're going to be doing these every Friday at 1 o'clock during this situation that we're under right now. May 1st, Gino Buffari, CEO of Home Services of America, and Chris Stewart, CEO of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, will be joining us. And on May 1st, spoiler alert, we're going to be launching our new marketing campaign. I didn't tell Melissa and Rajiva I was going to tell everybody that, so you guys better have it ready. We have focused most of our events on how to conduct business in a virtual world, which is important. But today, we'll be focusing on something that is just as important or more important, your mental and emotional well-being. We are so happy that you are joining us today and hope that you find value in discussing how to navigate some of this chaos and find calm and motivation. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our panelists. Dr. Nicole Lipkin is a clinical and organizational psychologist and the CEO of Equilibria Leadership Consulting. She is a keynote speaker, consultant, and executive coach, and has shared her expertise on NPR, NBC, Forbes, CBS, and other media outlets. She is also the founder of the Young Leader Project. She is the author of the book, What Keeps Leaders Up at Night, and the co-author of Why in the Workplace, Managing the Me First Generation. And she is quoted as saying her most important and favorite job is lead consultant for Berkshire Hathaway, Fox & Roach Realtors, and the Trident Group. Welcome, Nicole. Dr. Kayla Leleux-Labarge is a clinical organizational psychologist and senior consultant at Equilibria Leadership Consulting. She specializes in executive coaching, mindfulness, resilience, and group behavioral dynamics, but has been heard saying to many people her favorite job is consultant for Berkshire Hathaway, Fox & Roach Realtors, and the Trident Group.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone.
And Alyson Goldstein, she's new to the crew, is an executive coach at Equilibria Leadership Consulting. See a pattern here, everybody? She is currently completing her doctoral rotation and is expected to graduate in May, probably a virtual graduation, with a doctorate in clinical psychology and an MBA from Widener University. She is also a PA certified school psychologist and has been heard telling many people she's looking forward to her favorite job being consultant for Berkshire Hathaway, Fox & Roach Realtors, and the Trident Group.
Yes,
Aly Goldstein.
Absolutely. Hello.
So let's just jump right in. Over a month into this pandemic, people are starting to get tired and are having trouble self-motivating. What are some ways to increase motivation and energy? What are some tips and tricks for making the most out of each day?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start and take that one. So first, I think it's important to just understand why we're feeling fatigued, why we're feeling less motivated than usual. And it really has to do with the fact that our brains have kind of been running on adrenaline and cortisol for the past month or so now, trying to figure out if we're going to work, what work is going to look like, if our family's okay, if we're okay. And what happens is that the brain can only last so long doing that before it starts to crash. And when it crashes, we feel like we have trouble self-motivating. And really what this is, it's not something to be hard on yourself about. Many of us who are hard workers, we find ourselves kind of killing ourselves over the fact that we're not as motivated, right? And so the point is that we need to just pause. We need to find some time to put our oxygen mask on. And you've heard that on planes. But really, that's just a metaphor for taking care of yourself, right? When we take time to slow down and turn that part of our brain on that's kind of off, that's running on fumes, we kind of get off the hamster wheel of problem solving. And it allows us to fill in that space with things that we value, things that make us feel a little bit more in control, right? So when you get off the hamster wheel, it's important to plan your day, right, based on your values, because we can be very motivated by our values. If you value family, making sure that you have goals and plans and things scheduled to activate that value. If you value hard work, making sure that every day in the same type of way, you have something planned and scheduled. The goal is to take control of the part of the brain that we do have control over and turn off that harmful part that's causing us to crash. And this is especially true as adults. We need to plan for play and creative outlets. We can't just work. We can't just take care of our family. We have to play. And this might sound counterintuitive, but again, it has a chemical reasoning behind it. When we take time and we play, like when we dance, you know, Nicole, she was a dance movement person in college, and we always talk about how our team really loves to dance. But when we take time to dance and play, it actually releases the opposite chemicals. It releases chemicals in our brain that heal the brain, heal the body. So now in a time of stress more than ever, right, we're having to schedule time for play, for the things that we value, and for really turning down the part of the brain that's trying to solve problems it can't solve.
Thank you.
Would anyone else add anything to that? Nicole or Aly, would you add anything?
I actually want to add one thing. You know, there was a, I don't know if it was Instagram or Facebook, but there was a thing going around that said basically, like, if you don't write your book or don't, you know, learn a new skill or don't, I don't know, then basically it's a lack of self-discipline versus a lack of time. And you know what, that just makes me so annoyed, because the bottom line is how tone deaf that comment was, and how much it got spread around. Because the bottom line is that everyone is, like Kayla was saying, like, our brains are reacting. You can't fight your biology. Every single person is reacting right now in the way they react. And I think one of the most important things that you can do is figure out what works for you, not what works for the next person. It doesn't matter. Yeah, someone absolutely might write a novel during this, and someone might watch the most Netflix on the planet after this. And both are totally cool and totally okay. You just have to figure out what works for you and stop self-comparison and looking around.
I like to say it's about controlling the day and not letting the day control you. I think that's really important. We've talked a lot on in our videos and our town halls previously, and it's about having a routine. Make sure that you have a start to the workday and an end to the workday. Now, as sales associates, emergencies are always going to come up after hours, but typically when we were non-virtual, you had a time where you sort of started your workday and you kind of stopped your standard workday. So I would encourage you to try and continue to do that, and I think that'll help. All right, so let's move to the next question. Many of us compartmentalize to get through this global crisis day by day. Is this a healthy way to manage stress? What are some ways to keep from catastrophizing?
Well, I'm gonna chime in on this one. Look, I think compartmentalizing is a super, super healthy habit. If you do it for your entire life and don't deal with things, then it's not a super, super healthy habit. But right now, it's keeping a lot of us. It's giving us, a lot of us, the ability to actually function and do what we have to do. The brain is a really powerful, powerful tool and does things without you knowing. And sometimes when you're compartmentalizing, that means that not compartmentalizing means that you wouldn't be able to focus. So compartmentalizing is something that we do as humans to allow us to focus on what we need to focus on in the moment. That's one of the benefits. Again, it can be unhealthy, but in this time, it can be super, super healthy.
Nicole, before you move on, when you talk about compartmentalize, what exactly do you mean?
So what I mean by that is that, you know, my brain is taking information, blocking out all the noise and compartmentalizing it into a nice little box that I'm going to lock up and deal with later, so I can focus on something else. Right? So where it can become unhealthy in life is if we compartmentalize, you know, things that have happened to us in our lives, or experiences that we have, or whatever it might be, and then we lock it away and put the box on the shelf and maybe never come back to it. Because what happens with that box on the shelf over time is that, you know, through time, maybe little cracks start happening in the box, or little holes start forming, and then, you know, all the vapors from that box start seeping out and impacting us. So you eventually have to deal with it. But putting some stuff on the shelf and not trying to deal with every single thing that's coming at you is okay. It's a healthy habit. It's your brain's way of saying, okay, one thing at a time. Because for a lot of us, you know, this experience is producing fear. It's producing ambiguity. And as humans, we do not do well with not knowing where we're going or what's happening. Ambiguity is a very difficult state to live in for all of us. Some of us might be feeling a lot of negativity or fear, whatever it might be. Staying stuck in that can feel like quicksand. Remember Never Ending Story, that movie, when the horse is like sinking into the quicksand and it's like the saddest scene in the world? Like, it can feel like that, right? It always makes me so sad, that scene. So sometimes we just have to say, not doing that today. Gonna put it in its little box and focus on what we have to do. Having said that, at some point, it is important to experience the feels, to feel the feels, and do what you have to do to cope with whatever might be coming your way. Now, you had also mentioned catastrophizing. So catastrophizing is a big one for a lot of us. Catastrophizing is a cognitive distortion, okay? There's a name for it. That's like, you know, sometimes I might catastrophize, like my husband might go out and say like he's going to call me, and, you know, when he does it and when he says he's going to call, like clearly he's dead on the side of the street in a ditch. Like, that's where, you know, the brain goes. That's catastrophizing, right? Where we blow things up and make a big deal out of something based on evidence that we just don't have. Again, so normal that there's even a name for it. And it even falls under this big psychological category called cognitive distortions. It's your brain playing tricks on you. That's okay. You know when it's happened. You know when you're blowing things up. And right now, during this time period, it's pretty easy to do that. And it's also, because we're living in such an ambiguous time, it's pretty easy to blow things up and not know if we're blowing them up or not. So again, it's a common thing. One of the best strategies to deal with this is get it out of your head. Because when we leave our thinking in our head, it allows for hijacking, emotional hijacking, right? Because like, think about it. Think about like times in your life where you might have a to-do list or a thing or something, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger in your head, or more emotional in your head. And it's like, oh my God. Or like if you were angry at someone and you don't get it out, like, and you're processing it in your head, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It gets emotionally hijacked and it becomes this big monster. Well, the thing is the same with our thoughts and catastrophizing. It can become really big into this like huge, big ordeal. If you start speaking it out loud, especially to a trusted advisor or a friend or someone that cares about you, say it out loud. Because, I mean, first of all, when you hear yourself speak it out loud, it puts a little logic around it, right?
Definitely.
Second, and if you speak it to someone else who's more objective than you might be, it puts it into perspective, what's real versus what is being blown out of proportion.
That's great. That's so true. I love the part about saying it out loud to someone else, because when you hear yourself, you're like, This is crazy. Mm-hmm. Just a couple of things that I try to share with my team is take it one day at a time. Don't look too far, because we don't know when this thing's going to end. All we can control is what we're doing. We can't control when this is going to end, but we can control what we're doing with our days. And one of the things that I've been talking to our teams about is make sure that when we come out of this thing, you're the best version of yourself. Mentally, physically, talk a lot about getting outside, exercising, even if it's stretching or yoga. Focus on some mental things so that we're the best version of ourselves when we come out of this thing. Another thing I'll add is don't waste your worry, right? There's no point worrying about when this thing's going to end. it's like the hamster wheel. You're going to be going through this thing. And the other thing is, everyone is going through sort of basically the same thing right now. We're all in the same boat, so, and we will get through this. But again, let's do everything that we can to be the best version of ourselves when we come out on the other side.
And Larry, one thing I want to add, if you are worried, you're worried. But a really good way to deal with worry is to say out loud, I'm worried. Like, label that emotion. I'm scared. Label it. Get it out. Because again, when you put a label to it, it makes it from here and it brings it down to here and puts it in its place a little bit. Talk to people. Bring it out.
And would you agree it's okay to worry, but just don't let it dominate your entire well-being?
Yes. And if it's dominating, recognize that and get the help that you need if it's dominating. And it's okay. You can get the help that you need.
Yeah.
And that is exactly why I call Nicole 3 times a day. Thanks for taking my calls.
I would add one thing, Larry, like, we are in a global pandemic, so there is a lot of real natural worry, but it's whenever the hamster wheel is a really important visual metaphor because we're not hamsters. So when you find that you're turning into a hamster, that you've been active all day but not productive, going back to the first question, that usually means you ran on the hamster wheel and you got nowhere all day. And what that really means is that you're probably in some type of distortion, whether it be you're compartmentalizing too much or not enough, right? Or you're catastrophizing and you're maximizing stress to a bigger level. So I think anytime, and using that visual metaphor of I'm not a hamster, get off the hamster wheel when you notice yourself going in circles, is just a funny way, like Nicole said, to bring it from way up here to something laughable. Like, yeah, I'm not a hamster, right? Get off the hamster wheel.
You touched on something that I like to say. Don't confuse activity with productivity, right? So set the course for the day and make sure that you accomplish, what you want to accomplish. Again, it comes back to controlling the day and not letting the day control you, which can apply not to just being sheltered in place during a pandemic, but everyday life. Okay, next one goes to Aly. I hear that some people miss their office at work. I haven't heard that, but okay, we'll go with it. I hear that some people miss their office at work. What are the best ways to organize your physical space at home so it feels good when you go to your home workspace each day? How can you maximize the environment to increase productivity?
And this is something I've been talking about with a lot of people, and something I've thought a lot about as I have worked from home for a really long time. And so, the first step I always talk about is doing self-assessment and figuring out, like, what kind of person are you? What type of environment really helps you kind of thrive, focus the most, be the most productive? Is that a very quiet room? Is it a little disorganized, or is it very neat and structured? Is there some background noise? Understanding what is gonna, be the most conducive environment to being an effective worker, and then setting that up with whatever you have available to you at home as much as possible. Also, thinking ergonomically, if you can have a larger screen that, you don't have to look down all the time, or even just raising your own computer screen. I've certainly had probably like 10 textbooks stacked on top of the kitchen table at one point, so I could have a standing desk at some point. So just being really creative with how you can structure, your work environment at home. And also, Larry, you've been talking a lot about this idea of controlling the day. And I think that also maximizing productivity at home is a lot about, using the new flexibility you have, working at home and structuring daily tasks in different ways, in a way that matches like your daily energy patterns. So being more mindful of how, at what times are you most productive or least productive during the day. And that might be different than, your productivity when you are in the workplace, because you're outside of this, pretty structured office. And trying to match those tasks with those daily energy patterns to improve productivity, and also, using strategies that are going to minimize stress. Things that aren't working well, don't keep trying to do it because it's not working for you. Try something new, and reflect on that. Was that better? Is that improving my well-being because I'm less stressed? that kind of thing. And also definitely thinking about the boundaries that you're going to be setting between yourself and your family members, right? So how are they going to know if you're on a call that you cannot be interrupted? Is there a sign on the door? What's kind of like the family signal for that? Or when you're working on something, but it's okay for you to be interrupted, or you're working on something and could help, you know, your child out with an activity also at that time. So figuring out really those explicit boundaries for moving between work and personal responsibilities.
Thanks. You touched on something that I think that I've shared with my team, is that, you know, before we would leave the house and go to the office, and that sort of started our day. And then when the day was over, we would leave the office and come home. Again, a lot of sales associates, and in our business, you have emergencies that come up after hours. But typically there was a start, which is when you got to the office, and an end when you left the office. Now it's a very gray area because you're doing everything from home. So please make sure that you're working or you're not working. Trying to do both at the same time while you're with your family is not good for you, and it's not good from that. It's not good for them. And the other thing is, I drew this I sent this out for production, and it just came back, and it's this chart right here. I hope you can see that. So one circle is what you control, what you can control, and the other circle is what you can't control. And the middle part is what you should be focusing on. So just again, try not to focus too much on what you can't control, and try to focus your energy on what you can control.
And Larry, I want to say one more thing. Like, yeah, we were used to getting up, doing our stuff, going to work, and then end of the workday coming home. Reframe this. Like, you can still do it from your house, whether that be at one of the people on our team. What she does with her kid is she plays hi ho, it's off to work we go, and then at the end of the day, it's a little Dolly Parton 9 to 5. Like, it's end of the workday. That's it. You can do that, or you know what? Go for if you live in the suburbs, not if you live where I live in the city, but go for a teeny little walk, like you're walking to work, and then go for a little teeny walk at the end of the day, like you're walking home from work, or whatever it might be. But you can also create these boundaries, physical boundaries, by doing things like that.
I want to add one more. Let me add one more thing, Larry, if you don't mind, about physical workspace. I think a lot of times during stress, we want to stay in bed, or we want to work in the bed, or we want to work in our room. And I think this is a really important thing to consider about physical space and where you're working, because the brain, it also, back to compartmentalization, it likes having a place to work, a place to rest. And what happened is if you're a person who works from your bed, or if you're in your new routine, you've found that to be most comfortable, you're probably also finding after a couple of weeks, you're not being able to sleep as well, because your brain has now associated bed and bedroom with work and productivity. And so when we lay in our bed at night, it's like, oh, we're at work now, right? In the same way that our offices promoted that same kind of feeling. So for the people who are working in their room, being very careful that if you cannot work in the bed, getting out of that so it can still be a place of rest and relaxation. And if you can be out of your bedroom altogether, that is preferred, because again, like you're saying, you want to have a place where you can end your work day and have a place of rest, wherever that may be in your house.
That's good advice. Thank you, Kayla. Okay, it's been hard to be as productive as I'd like to be. How can I be productive, but also protective of my sanity? Nicole?
Okay. So you're going to have to cut me off because I'm about to talk a lot. So,
shocker.
Yeah, I'm treated. So I want to start off by saying a little bit about stress, okay, and expectations here. So I like to think of our brains as a shelf you go buy at IKEA, right? So you go to IKEA, you go in there, you smell the cinnamon buns, you don't buy them, and you go buy your shelf, and you get out of there, hopefully without hating the person you're with, and you go set up your shelf. And you know the little instructions with that little guy, you know, that says like how much weight should be on that shelf. It says like, don't put more than 50 pounds on the shelf. So you set your shelf up, and that's an amazing thing that you were able to do it. And you put your tchotchkes and your books on that shelf. and more tchotchkes and books. And it's at 30 pounds, it's at 40 pounds, it's at 50 pounds, more tchotchkes and books, it's at 60 pounds, 70 pounds, and it starts to sag. And you keep on putting tchotchkes and books on that shelf. And at 80 pounds, it breaks and all your books and tchotchkes fall over the place. And you're like, this crap is cheap. IKEA sucks. Not ever acknowledging that it said only put 50 pounds on that shelf. So our brains are the same way, right? So we have all the signs and symptoms of a sagging shelf, but we're adults. We ignore them. We keep going, you know, and the signs and symptoms are pretty familiar. Like, for example, you know, when we used to be able to go to the market, like you go to the supermarket and you have things in your head that you know you need to get, and you get there and you don't remember anything. You don't remember what you're supposed to get. Or you are reading the same paragraph on an email or a book over and over and over again and nothing is sinking in. Or the big one, you wake up chronically agitated and hate everyone around you constantly. Like, these are signs and symptoms of a sagging shelf. Because, like, you know what? We're not supposed to be chronically agitated and hate everyone. We're supposed to be able to hold a little information in our head, and we're supposed to move on from one paragraph to the next. These are examples of our sagging shelf, and we often ignore it. And then all of a sudden it snaps and we freak out and we wonder why. And my freak out might be different than Larry's freak out, might be different than Kayla's freak out, which might be different than Aly's freak out. But whatever your freak out is, whatever your default is, whether it's getting angry, whether it's withdrawing, whether it's getting so super stressed that it's leaking out everywhere, whether it's sobbing in a ball, whatever it is, or eating chocolate chips, which I've been doing lately, whatever it is, you have to own your sagging shelf. Because we are adults, like ignoring the signs and symptoms, because the consequences of ignoring the sagging shelf and letting it snap are too profound, whether it be to ourselves, to our families, to our colleagues. It's too much. Like, we have a responsibility to manage our sagging shelves, especially right now, because it's real. Like, it's, again, that ambiguity, that stress, that worry, like this collective thing that's going on that we're experiencing, like, all of our shelves are already sagging, let alone all the other stuff. So I wanted to say that first, because that helps put productivity in perspective and your expectations of productivity in perspective. It might look a little different than what it was before. And what you were able to accomplish before might look a little different. Some of you are at home with kids hanging off of you. Some of you are at home with a partner that, you know what, it's been a little tough. Some of you are at home alone and more isolated than you've been in the past. Whatever your situation is, whatever it is, it's relative, and you're managing, and that's the other thing. I think as humans, what we like to do is immediately, like, we start talking and complaining, but then we're like, wait, I'm super grateful. I'm not homeless. I'm not on the street. I'm not this. It is okay to feel the feels. And it is okay temporarily to be like, you know what, this sucks. I don't like my kids hanging off of me right now. Or I don't like being isolated in my home. Or I don't like who I'm stuck in the house with. Like, it is okay to feel the feels. Because if you don't acknowledge what's going on, then that shelf starts to sag more. Or that box starts to leak, or whatever it might be. Now, staying in that is also not productive. But feeling the feels, acknowledging it, doing what you have to do, and acknowledging that it's not the same as before is super important. So kind of going back to what Aly was saying before, when you're looking at your workspace and how to create that, like, you also have to look at, like, your who you are when it comes to productivity right now, who you might have been. Grieve that, let it go, who you are right now and what your circumstances allow you to be. Hey, when this is over, you get to analyze it again, and you get, you know, to blossom into whoever you're going to be after this too. But right now, look at it, analyze who you are, set the goals and expectations around that versus what it used to be. You know, Larry keeps on saying, like, you know, plan your day, structure your day. Yeah, around what you are able to do and what your goals are. And you know what? You might come into days where your to-do list just isn't working and it's moving on to the next one. Get yourself a system, you know, figure out, and I always put things through this kind of productivity, or I always put this through this exercise. If you have your list, and I do suggest have your list versus have it in your head, go through your list, go through each item, get it all out there on paper, and look at each item. Is this in service to the goals, my personal goals? Is this in service to my professional goals for today? And if anything doesn't meet that, that goes on another list. And you can have many lists, my 1 month list, my 3 month list, my year list. And you know what? The things that are not in service to your personal and professional goals and things that you need to accomplish in the short term, that goes on a different list. Because that helps productivity. That helps set the structure that Larry's talking around, that helps set the structure of your day and what you need to accomplish versus the emotion of what you think you need to accomplish, which for a lot of us feels like we need to do everything, right? We don't need to do everything. We need to figure out what we actually need to do. So reframing that is super important.
That's great.
Think,
Go ahead,
just to jump in quickly, Nicole, that speaks to also getting it out of your head, right? Because sometimes, people have a lot to do, but sometimes it feels like a lot of things to do, a lot of tasks. And by writing it down, you can realize, okay, this is actually really manageable. Now I can concretely see what I have to do, and this is a manageable chunk.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And to add to the shelf metaphor, which is a really great metaphor, because our mind does get leaky and saggy when we put too much on it. I think that, to Nicole's compartmentalization question and answer, when we compartmentalize too many boxes and put it on our shelf, that's when it usually starts to sag, right? And so that's the key of when, like Nicole was mentioning, it can be healthy or unhealthy, that compartmentalization. It's like, if every time you feel angry, you're putting it in a box and putting it on the shelf, right? It's going to start to sag very quickly. And so I think that's important to notice, right? And then back to that, it's, what Nicole's saying is like when we take the box of anger off the shelf and we open it and we look at it, it's off the shelf now. It's out of our mind. It's off the shelf, and we can make room for something else. So the more often we're being able to check in with ourselves emotionally and not put every single emotion on the shelf, only the ones that are going to make us really non-productive, right? We need to put on the shelf immediately. But the ones that we can look at really safely, we need to be looking at them so we can save room on our shelf for the more important things, right? That are going to help us get through the day.
Yeah, an activity that I do so I'm a list person, surprised. And so at the beginning of each day, I start my day and I look at my calendar as far as what events I have. And then I look at my list of things that I have to do. And I look at that list and I say, okay, what can wait? And then I'll move those items to another day. And then what the day started with 5 meetings and 14 items now is 5 meetings and 5 items. And now it's not a disastrous sort of situation, and it's something that I know that I can handle. So just want to stay on this topic. In 2 sentences or 3 sentences, can you address 3 specific real life situations that are happening right now? What about the parents that have the kids, banging on the door, hanging on them all day long? What advice do you have for them?
So I have big advice because I have one of those. Here's the bottom line. So, first of all, like, teachers, thank you, right? I mean, mine's a little guy, so he doesn't have to get taught yet. But let go of the Martha Stewart expectations and let go of the judgment. Like, the parents that are rocking it at homeschooling, posting all over Facebook, you might read that and be like, oh my God, what am I doing? The ones who are just putting them in front of TV and being like, I can't deal. The master homeschoolers might be like, oh my God, what do you do? Like, we are all so good at social comparison and judging one another. Like, if there's ever a time to stop doing that, it's right now. It's right now, because you know what? Every kid right now is learning life school. And in life school, what you learn is that not everything works out fantastically as you expected. Sometimes you get really disappointed. Sometimes things suck. In life school, you learn that your parents aren't perfect. and might get sad and stressed and angry and don't have the time to go put their happy face on all the time. In life school, you understand that sometimes your parents are working and like you can't come in and you have to wait and learn patience. So your kids right now, if you can reframe it, are learning some of life's most important lessons that some of us as adults haven't learned, you know?
Right.
So think of it that way. That these kiddos, as hard as it is to see your kids suffer, are developing resilience, are developing perseverance, are getting more in touch with their emotions and learning how to talk about them. And maybe you're providing that space for them.
And I'll just thank you. And you mentioned social media. I just encourage everybody to remember, no one's posting their kids sitting in front of a TV on social media. People are posting the highlights. You know, that's what social media is about. It's about posting the highlights. So don't try to compare what's happening all day long to one snippet that you saw on Facebook. They may have worked 5 hours to create that one snippet that you're looking at. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the situation where someone's partner is driving them nuts?
So this is a tough one. So again, I think that this is very much testing relationships right now. Because a lot of couples aren't used to, or roommates or whatever it might be, aren't used to being around each other 24/7. And also, again, when you take that sagging shelf analogy, aren't used to being around each other 24/7 where the shelf is sagging and patience might be running a little bit thin. So again, really great opportunity, if you can reframe it. It's a really good opportunity to learn to have conversations around this sagging shelf and use that analogy and kind of what your default is. You know, like, for example, my default when my shelf is sagging is like, I get like I can get super impatient and maybe a little bit angry and short. So I'm definitely using that opportunity to have conversations with my husband about it. Like this is the stuff, because instead of immediately arguing, having those conversations, like, look, this is like live TV. This is really happening. So let's get better at communicating. The other thing is, I think that I won't get too psychological on us, but you know, we all have what's called core emotional concerns. You know, and I know that if I start mentioning these, you guys have experienced these before, and they're all related to our psychological development. So fairness. So for example, if you feel like something's unfair or unjust and that gets triggered within a relationship, it's hard to let that go, right? That causes like, it triggers you in that relationship. Affiliation, like when you feel left out, or you don't feel included in something, that can really trigger. Appreciation is one, when you don't feel like the person you're living with or whatever it might be is appreciating you. There's some others, the role, status, and I can't remember that last one. But this is a real opportunity to understand where you get triggered and what you need from the relationship, and to communicate about that, and right. To do it in a way where you're both doing that. So let's stop the couples therapy, but you hear me.
All right, so one more situation that's happening out there. What about those that are home alone? This is really tough. There's some people that are super excited about this. And there's some people where this is extremely, extremely difficult. So I think for those that are home alone, you need to ask for what you need, because not everyone might understand that situation. So again, like I said, some people might really be enjoying this and some people might be really finding this hard. You need to ask for what you need. If it's very difficult, don't minimize what you're going through. Own what you're going through and ask for support and help, and make sure that you're connecting. And for the rest of us on this call, for people that we know that are living at home, it might be hard for people to ask for help, or ask for like, hey, I need some time, like to ask for this. So
when we know that people are alone, like reach out. Same with all three of these groups. You know, the parents with the kids hanging out, like reach out to one another. Because as humans, many of us are really bad at asking for help and asking for what we need.
All right, now we're going to see how good you three really are, because I'm going to throw a question at you that was not part of the script. There's a fourth category of people that I was just alerted to. We still have some people that, because of the nature of their job, they have to go into the office. This can be scary for these people, but they are frontline workers like all the others that are out there that have to be out there in order to do their jobs. So what advice do you have for them? Because I'm sure that it's very hard for them to do this. So what thoughts do you have for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've actually gotten the pleasure to work with some of the frontline folks, and really, I think it comes back down to control, and it comes to controlling as much as you can to your diagram that you showed, right? And kind of, if you can control as much as you can at putting as much of the worry on the shelf, because the worry is going to be there, right? So for the people who are having to be out there, making sure that they're taking the appropriate precautions, making sure that they're wearing gloves and wearing masks and wiping down the places that they're going. Asking employers, right? If hey, I'm having trouble getting masks or I'm having trouble getting gloves, like, do you have ideas? And making it a larger conversation about how, as a unit, you can control some of the stuff that, like you said, is out of control. But that doesn't mean that you're going to have that grass is greener mentality on the other side of the people that you're seeing aren't frontline, right? They still may have that. And so to that, I would say the grass is greener always where you water it, right? And so again, it's coming back into controlling, watering your own yard, making sure that you're doing everything you can to make yourself feel protected within the environment that you're finding yourself in.
Oh, that's great. I'm feeling we made the right choice bringing you three ladies on for this activity. Doing a very good job. All right, now take it easy on you. This question was prepared. We all need a wellness practice to keep us healthy during this time, but everyone needs something different. What are some strategies that can keep us well physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually?
Yeah, so I always start with the mind because we have this powerful computer up here that can really make or break us. And so in times of high stress, research shows that the hands down best way to decrease stress and anxiety is by having a mindfulness practice. And I think so often when we hear the word mindfulness, we all think we're gonna float away as on a Buddhist lotus flower. And that's not at all what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is very different from meditation. Mindfulness is something that we can do right now, right? In fact, I would encourage anyone who's listening to just tap into how they're feeling right now without judging it. Bam, everybody successfully just did mindfulness, right? So it's about taking these small moments to get present and circling back around to the first why running on. This is kind of like the gas pump. Mindfulness fills us back up. It turns our brain off for a moment and allows us to reset. So I always start with if we take care of our computer, it won't freeze. Our pinwheel won't come up, right? And that's, again, very important during this time. And once we take care of our brains, once we get present with what is, whether it be that we're sore today, that we're tired today, that we're angry today, we then can take that a bit further and initiate a larger self-care practice, right? Where we start to understand what does replenish us, what does make us feel good in all those areas, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You know, for some people, it might be spending time with family. For the people who are isolated alone, it might be that they're cooking meals to take care of themselves, or maybe physical exercise routines is it releases those chemicals in the brain. But most important, social beings. So outside of the brain, we have to have that social connection. Even if you're an introvert and you like being home alone, we need to make time for that social connection. But back to the brain being a really powerful and using mindfulness the most out of it. really, we can just pose questions to the brain. I call it dropping a pebble. And a pebble, if we drop it in water, it creates this ripple really naturally. We don't have to make it create a ripple. And the same thing is true with our brain. We can drop questions that are like pebbles that our brain will answer just because we ask them. I would encourage anyone to ask themselves right now, how am I feeling physically? And their brain will shoot out an answer almost instantly because it's that powerful. If it doesn't shoot out an answer, give it a moment. It'll shoot out an answer. And then the next thing you need to ask yourself is, okay, if you ask you're feeling physically and you say, oh, I'm sore in my shoulders, then ask yourself, what do I need to feel better? These are, again, the brain will shoot out 10 things. And once usually it's a physical response to a physical response. So if you're sore in your shoulders, maybe you need to do some physical stretching, right? If you find yourself mentally drained, maybe 5 minutes of mindfulness is what you need, right? And then once your brain answers, if it has a lot of answers, write them down, get them out, like Nicole and Aly have been saying. And then honor that. So often when we're in crisis, our brain says, whoa, I need a nap. And we compartmentalize that wrong thing. We don't listen. We're like, no, I'm a beast, right? And we do that for 4 weeks and our shelf breaks completely, right? And so I think it's about being compassionate to yourself and honoring that answer. And really, I think scheduling time, once you know what replenishes you, it's something you can do every day, as often as you can, to make sure you're always kind of watering your grass, right? Making sure your shelf isn't leaking or about to break. So I would say being compassionate and just listening to what you actually need, because that's going to be different for each person.
Yeah, we talk, I've talked a lot about, being the best version of yourself, called June 1st. But I think it's okay also to participate in complete mindless activity. It's okay to binge watch Netflix. I just got finished binge watching Mindhunter. I mean, I couldn't put that down. Highly recommended. And that was after I binge watched Ozark. So I'm a very goal-focused kind of person, but I find myself in front of Netflix plenty of times during the shutdown.
Well, you're goal focused on your binge watching. Reframe that.
Yeah. Claire, you make a really good distinction though. Sometimes when we ask ourselves what we need, our brain might answer, we need a binge watch Ozarks, right? But if it's answering that every time, and you notice that after 14 hours of Mindhunter serial killer research, that you're feeling kind of depressed, maybe next time you ask yourself, go a little bit deeper and ask your mind, what else can I do to feel better? Because this may have lost its allure after, 5 seasons of different shows that you've been watched through, and allowing that diversity, and again, honoring whatever it says.
Yes, a main course of Mindhunter preceded by an appetizer of Larry David.
Great meal. Great meal.
Yeah.
All right, final question. The entire world seems upside down. How can we deal with this new reality? And what are some things that can get us trapped in a cycle of fear and worry about the new normal as well as the future?
I have a really simple thing here because, again, we have no idea. We don't know. But what we do know, and kind of, Larry, going back to what we control, what we can't control, what we know and what we don't know. What we do know is that stress begets stress, anxiety begets anxiety, depression begets depression, negativity begets negativity. And we do know that we actually can make choices, kind of what Kayla was saying, we can look around, we can make choices about the things we're engaging in or the things we're not engaging in that might feed into that negativity, depression, worry, all of that. So my big suggestion, really small takeaway, turn off the news, turn off your Facebook feed, turn it all off. Don't read the news. Occasionally give yourself just complete breaks and go, before this, there were things that you found enjoyable. and there were things that would make you smile, like watching a puppy video or a kitten video or a comedian or whatever it is. Go do that, or talking to someone that you love. Like, go do that and instill those little habits, and make some like sacred space every day, or every weekend, or whatever it is, or some like a week. I don't know what it is, where you're not letting all the information come in. Just take a breather.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Aly? Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Kayla.
I might add that the biggest thing that we've been hearing over and over and over again is when are things going to get back to normal? When are things going to get back to normal? And I think this is a really slippery slope, because asking ourselves, listen, things are never going to get back to normal. We'll have a new normal, right, after all this, but we don't even have any idea what that will look like now, right? And so I think that when people are stuck saying, oh, man, I wish things were back to normal. Listen, if I had a magic wand, I'd give it to the world right now, but we don't, right? And so that's an important message to hear, because we all have to kind of get to that end of the stages of grief, that acceptance piece that allows us to say, okay, I'm here now in this new normal. And what can I do in the new normal to make sure I'm not adding to my suffering, right? Because we are all adjusting. And so being careful that you're not resisting too much this new normal, this new routine, to the point where you're adding a lot more suffering onto yourself than if you just like got present with where we are. You can problem solve, you can move forward with that acceptance versus, again, staying on the hamster wheel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Aly?
To piggyback right off of that, just setting up new realistic expectations for this current reality for however long it might be lasting, and just really being okay with that, being intentional about things that are enough, just like what is just the right amount or just enough that you need to do, and allowing yourself to, make those your goals and feel good about those new expectations.
Excellent. Well, that concludes our Friday forum on mental well-being and emotional well-being. I'll just before I thank everybody, there's one thing I'll just say. I think it's really important to do. If you're home by yourself or you're home with the same person, if you want to pick up the phone and call someone, I would highly suggest you make that a video phone call. Okay, the more we see each other, the better it is for everybody. Have video happy hours, video dinners with other people. The more you can communicate with each other visually, I think the better that we're all going to be. And I think we talked today about it's okay to acknowledge what you're feeling and communicate and share that with other people, because they're probably feeling the same thing. Like I said, we're all going through the same thing right now. So thank you very much, Aly, Kayla, and Nicole. Excellent job. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.